welcome back to my channel. Today we're going on an exciting journey to the magnificent land of Alaska. So if you're planning an Alaska land tour, then you're in for a serious treat because we are about to embark on quite the adventure, and I'm going to share with you a few things here that I wish I knew before I set foot in all of the breathtaking wilderness. So go ahead, grab yourself a little cup of hot cocoa and get ready for my top 15 tips to make your land tour an unforgettable experience and what I wish I knew before I had my land tour. Likely you're still in the planning phase and you may not know all of these things about planning your cruise tour. So first up is the preference in how you organize your trip. So a lot of these trips are fully customizable and you can choose what you want to do first, whether that being the land portion or the cruise portion first. And most people actually recommend that you do the land portion first before the cruise, as the land tends to be a bit more adventurous, going out, exploring, and exerting a lot more energy. So when you get back on that cruise, you can fully relax, enjoy the spa, enjoying the glaciers on your balcony. And matter of fact, actually 60% of cruise tour guests do this and do the land portion first. So it's more popular to do it this way. It's the way that I would have actually preferred doing it as this recommendation, but it didn't turn out that way for me on my land tour. So I was legitimately very exhausted by the end of the cruise, of course, doing all the excursions, seeing as much as possible. So when we got to some areas of the land tour, I thought, oh, for sure, I'll take a nap, relax a little bit on the train or the long bus ride, but I didn't. I powered through all of that exhaustion and I became overexcited, overstimulated in a sense with all of the wilderness and the sightseeing. Just looking out the window, honestly, it becomes so hard to close your eyes because you never know what you're going to see. We looked out the window and we saw moose. We looked out the window and saw incredible, beautiful scenery. So you didn't really come all this way to sleep, did you? So that's your first tip there. And of course, determining which lodges you will want to see in those customizations, because they actually have different plans to where you can see all or 3 or 2 and give it to where you want to see and what you want to see during your land tour. So I visited in this order. We'll go through and give you a super quick nugget about each of the lodges that I saw and how they're all kind of different with their own charm and unique characteristics. They each became a bit more interesting as each one we saw became more and more impressed. First stop, I went to the Kenai Princess Lodge. This is in Cooper's Landing on the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska. It sits right on the Kenai River, and the cabins here are the most rustic, cozy vibes that actually offer a personal wood burning stove in each room, in each cabin. No other Princess Lodge has this, so this was chef kiss, really cool.
Welcome to Kenai. We are in the wilderness right now. Arrived to Kenai Wilderness Lodge here with Princess Cruises, and this is super cool. Arrived, got some lunch, got situated in our room, our cabin. Amazing. But we're taking in the wilderness here. Steps down from the lodges in the main area, there is areas where there's trails. We can get all the way down to the Kenai River as well. Seeing fishermen and a lot of excitement, embracing nature.
Mount McKinley Lodge was next. This is Princess Wilderness Lodge, and it's really a short hike with their most famous attribute here is the treehouse. It's pretty famous because this treehouse was actually built on the TV show Animal Planet's Treehouse Masters. Have you seen this one? Well, you can look it up. It's on season number 9, and this would be a really fun thing to gear you up for your trip, or perhaps just go get inspired and watch it anyway. But it's the second largest lodge with 400 rooms.
All right, so we are in the main lodge here. Oh my gosh, look at this photo op. View from Denali. So it's interesting, I learned that the elevation is 2,310, but the restaurant is actually 320. And then wow, look at these chairs. Everyone's just enjoying the viewing points. And I can see from here, we have a piano, so they probably have some like nicely nightly music, but What's fun too is out here with these viewing platforms, we have a sign, and I think this was discussed the different peaks up on the treehouse. I was saying which one was what peak because we all were kind of in disagreement over which was the actual tallest peak because the clouds were covering and it was hard to tell at that moment.
Next up was the Denali Princess Wilderness Lodge, and this is the closest lodge to the entrance into Denali National Park. And it has the largest lodge with 500 rooms. And then we have Fairbanks Lodge, Princess Wilderness Lodge, and this lodge has its own vegetable garden that you can see, walk through, and they also have all that produce that is used in the lodge restaurant. So, true farm to table Alaskan vibes. Now, Princess's fifth lodge, which I didn't go to, was Copper River Princess Lodge, but a stay here will get you able to visit the largest national park, which is Wrangell St. Elias, and you can fish for Copper River red salmon. So, a quick note about the lodges. I think we may need to do a whole separate video, maybe doing some more deeper diving, comparing, contrasting, as I really feel like they kind of deserve that in their own right. If you're interested in that comparison, let me know in the comments, because one thing with all the lodges though is they're beautiful, but they have so many differences in the sense of what they offer. One other nugget for you to know before you go on your trip is that all of the lodges are actually cashless. Now, of course, there's ATMs found on the property, but that is their policy that they've become cashless. And this is actually a common thing that we've seen at not only lodges, but also resorts across the lower 48 as well. So just keep that in mind. A pro tip is I want you to travel with your best credit cards that are going to give you that return on points for perhaps dining and shopping, as well as you go off and you're spending your money. So, speaking of cash, though, one reason you may be looking for those ATMs throughout the lodge property is for gratuities throughout your cruise, perhaps for your land tour or just other gratuities. But gratuities are not included on the land portion of your vacation. So that's something that I did not know prior to going into it. And gratuities are strictly up to you. It should really be based on the quality of service that you received, of course, but they do provide you with some guidelines. This is actually posted in some of the lodge's paperwork that you'll receive as a reminder, on some of the guides. But I'll let you know what their suggested guidelines are so you can plan this into your budgeting. So, of course, you have transfers for your luggage, which we will talk about as well. That's $1 per bag, as this is suggested. For your driver, for touring you around, that's up to $10 per guest per day for a full day of driving. Housekeeping, the rate is $2 per room per night. Food service is 18 to 20 pre-tax on your bill, and a tour director would be $10 per person per day. And then the rail team, if you're taking the train, would be $10 per person per full day. And with tipping and showing gratuity, all of this, of course, is based on your experience, but you can show me by leaving a tip, by leaving a thumbs up on this video, and by not leaving your land tour up to chance, and want to making sure that you have the best satisfaction. You can join the savvy squad of cruisers and travelers who use a travel advisor to make sure that they have a blast at sea. So drop an anchor over at my website, alanazingano.com, for personalized recommendations, more insider tips. When you work with an agent, you'll get the best unbeatable deals. So really, you don't want to miss out. You can head over and get a free cruise quote when you sail smart with an advisor. The other thing is that when you do this, it helps support me, allowing me to make these type of videos so I continue to teach you everything that I know with this free content just like this. So let's dive into all of the tours because, of course, each lodge offers a variety of different tours when you visit all of the different lodges. And in your cabin, you will actually have your tour tickets, which supply you the confirmation, and they will be delivered right to your cabin. But these give you the meeting point and the time to which you need to show up. So this is very critical, and it's very similar to how cruise lines do it, delivering it to your cabin. So you don't want to miss those scheduled times. And I really put some emphasis on this because a lot of these tours are limited so that they will sell out quickly, and you might not be able to get it rescheduled if you miss your time or even get a refund. And to that point, with them working on tight schedules, perhaps you can join another group if you miss it. But if you're looking to reschedule it or get a refund, refunds for canceled tours actually have to be done 3 days prior. So just something to keep in mind as you're booking your land tour excursions. The other thing to note about the land tours is that they really range in price and they can become quite pricey. So I want you to pay attention to the key or the guide in the pamphlets and the books that they give you on the difficulty levels, and if you're planning on doing any fishing or fishing tours. Those actually require an additional purchase of a fishing license as well as a king salmon tag if you plan on doing any fishing for king salmon. Another thing to keep in mind here, one thing that I was actually quite surprised to learn is with the local interactions and those tours. So, of course, it's important for you to pay attention to the local culture and, of course, honor that, right? So, Alaska is home to a lot of diverse indigenous communities with its own rich traditions and history. And you want to take the time to learn about their customs and, of course, support the local businesses that you interact with. But here's the major thing that really kind of spun me for a loop. And I was shocked that coming across true local Alaskans wasn't as common as I thought it would be, like generational Alaskans. Of course, I did meet them throughout this trip, but I was surprised to see how many workers in a variety of different positions, from working in the lodges to working on buses to working on different excursions and things like that, came from the lower 48, came up to Alaska to work for this season. So, of course, that is one reason why our tour guide on our trip actually had our bus driver tell us so many stories throughout one of our long drives as we were traveling from one lodge to another. So we could really soak in what it was like for him to grow up in Alaska, hear about his childhood, and kind of made that bus ride go by as we could kind of listen to and admire his stories, because it's a little bit few and far between for someone to have generational knowledge of growing up in Alaska. Next, we want to talk about the weather. And first off, with the weather, Alaska's climate can really be quite unpredictable. You probably know this, but with a land tour, it can really vary depending on the region of where the lodges that you plan to go to. So it's really essential to pack accordingly. Of course, you're going to want to pack layers, and that's the key for all of the changing weather conditions. And even some of your tours will have you out early in the morning into the later early afternoon, and that's where you can see some of that weather change too. The morning will be cold and wet, and in the afternoon perhaps the sun will come out. So that's where those layers will really come in handy, and you want to be prepared for the sunny days or sudden rainstorms and things of that. Additionally, I want you guys to think about seeing the northern lights or the aurora borealis, because it's totally possible during a land tour. So if you don't know, the winter season is actually the best time to see the northern lights, but that's probably not when you're visiting the land tours, and because they're actually closed during the winter. But it's possible, and what you will need to know for this is that you need clear cloud coverage, so no low-hanging clouds. So major pro tip for you when you get to the lodges is pick up the phone in your cabin and call the front desk and ask to get on the Northern Lights wake-up call. Some lodges will do this for you, and you can have them ring you when they see the northern lights. For those people who are working the overnight shift, they'll go through and call everybody up, and so you can, go put your robe on and go step out outside. So this did happen during our trip, and guests were able to spot the northern lights when we were at Mount McKinley Wilderness Lodge. And the fun thing to know about this is that there's actually no two northern lights that are the same. So they're always different in size and in color. And fun fact for you, the Native American Inuit people call it the Aurora Asquarnet, and which means football players. So they say that it's like the spirits in the sky are playing with a head of a walrus. So kind of cool. So if you do see it, it'll be totally unique to you during your Alaska experience. Now we talked about weather here with the climate changing very differently and it can be dramatic throughout the day. So let's dive into a little bit of packing here because this is where a land tour does have a little bit of a difficulty when you pack here. So let's talk about it. Even during the summer, temperatures can drop, especially in the evening. You want to go out and hang out and enjoy roasting marshmallows by the fire during the land tours, but just make sure you bring those layers along with a waterproof jacket, warm sweaters, sturdy footwear. If you guys want to see a whole packing video for Alaska, let me know and I will get that for you as well. So don't forget a good pair of hiking boots as well, especially if you want to hike up to the Mount McKinley treehouse and explore a little bit of the rugged terrain. Side note, that is about a 10-minute walk. It's a little bit steep in some areas, but it's not that hard of a hike. So I encourage you to check that out. But packing leads me into the point here is about your suitcases and your luggage. If you're going on a land tour, I really urge you not to overpack. Now, of course, we all know the one thing we love about cruising is that it's not as detrimental if you overpack because you only unpack your suitcase once and you get to visit all these other cities and you don't have to worry about lugging your suitcase from one to another. Sadly, that's not the case on a land tour. Although, happy to say that they do help you assist with your luggage every step of the way. So, on the last night of your stay, you will receive a little piece of tag that you'll put on your luggage. When you receive these tags, that's your notification of what time you have to put your luggage out of your cabin door on your room, and then it will be delivered and placed into your next cabin at the next lodge, which is a lifesaver. So all you have to really do is make sure that all your stuff is closed up. You have perhaps a small day bag for you to fit underneath the seat of you on the train, and you're good to go. So overpacking can be quite the pain as just staying organized. This was one thing that I had a hard time with too many pieces of big luggage. Next up, let's talk about wildlife encounters. So Alaska, of course, is renowned for its abundant wildlife, and you're really likely to encounter some of the most incredible creatures during your land tour. However, it's crucial to maintain a respectful distance when you're observing this wildlife here. Of course, you want to see all of the different type of animals and wildlife, but they deserve their space. So remember to pack your binoculars or a zoom lens for your camera or your cell phone, which is so cool. I never heard about this before, but you're going to be able to capture those breathtaking moments without disturbing the natural nature in their behavior. So this one fun gadget here is what I learned about to help you get the perfect shot. Even if you're not a professional photographer, if you're not carrying all the big lenses for those animals that are super far away, but on a tour, on when we were on the Denali tour, I had a member in my group who had a singular binocular and it was put up to her phone camera. It was meant for this, but it was allowing you to capture those animals that were really far away in those pictures. I'll link it in the description box below so you can check that out if you're looking out for different type of gadgets to help you score some great photos. But continuing with the wildlife etiquette here, this is actually where I'm going to share something really embarrassing and somewhat of a diva moment. I'm not proud to have these thoughts and have these side eye moments, but I'm going to tell you so you can know and benefit from this here. So, while traveling through Denali National Park, they ask that you respect the carry in, carry out policy and you don't leave your trash or anything else behind. So now, in my lazy, half baked excuse, I didn't understand why this was such a big deal when we stopped at the restrooms on through the tour, which were very fancy porta potties, by the way, and the only restrooms available. So they have trash cans there outside of the restroom, and they're bear proof. But I just didn't understand, like, why is it such a big deal that we can't use them? Why supply them if it's that big of a deal? And as they were explaining to this before we got off the bus, I of course gave some side eye. I was tired. I'm just like, why is this a big deal? Don't provide them if we're not supposed to use them. I have no problem abiding, but what's the point? So I got my reasoning later on in the cruise when bears got extra close to our bus. And the bus driver explained that the bears' proximity and comfortableness to our bus is a result of the buses being on these tours. We maybe drove about 40 miles into the park here, and those buses are only the park buses. You can't, drive past a certain point without being on one of those tours with your guide and your bus driver. So it's very like legit. But they actually told us so many interesting things about how this works. They explained that they really don't want this to happen, that they don't necessarily want the bears to be coming this close to us on the buses here because they're wild, right? Like, let's not forget this. This is their natural habitat, their instincts, and if they grow accustomed to human life in their space, it can become dangerous for us. So, we had been instructed to not make a sound if anything like this happened, right? We are not allowed to talk. We can barely move. Do not stick any of your limbs out of the bus. But so many things could go wrong if we upset the bear, right? So, safety precautions. You really want to listen to those when they take you on these tours, when they tell you what to do, when you encounter this wildlife. Safety should always be your top priority on a Alaska land tour, whether you're hiking in the mountains or exploring glaciers or taking a tour. It's important to be prepared, as these tour guides will have had trainings to keep you safe, and they're covered in their essential safety gear like bear spray, their reliable maps, GPS devices, things like that. So listen to your tour guide's instructions, and so you know what to do in case a wildlife encounter becomes part of your tour. But for this tip, I want you to include a small first aid kit also in your suitcases that you can keep in your cabin, but just include some of those extra over the counter medicines and perhaps any prescription medicines as well, to have that extra in case. Reason being is that there was a member in our group who needed some specific medical supplies when we were at Denali Princess Lodge. And there's actually a nearby store there that sold some medical supply items, but unfortunately, they didn't have exactly what they needed. So, for your own comfort and peace of mind, you really want to make sure that you have any extra prescribed medicines, give yourself a buffer of extra, or along with anything that you perhaps could need of over the counter. I always have a little first aid kit that includes, some headache medicine, upset stomach medicine, cough drops as well, band-aids for blisters. Perhaps you haven't worn out those hiking boots and they're hurting your feet. I actually had to go buy some cough drops while I was at the Kenai Princess Lodge, and I noticed that it was very similar to cruise ship pricing in the sense that it's more expensive than if you were to go buy it at your Walgreens or CVS, back home. So just keep that in mind, that a small little supply is going to be convenient for you. Next up, let's talk about the midnight sun. Now, here's something that's truly fascinating about Alaska is the midnight sun phenomenon. So, in certain parts of the state, particularly during the summer when you will be traveling on your land tour, sometimes the sun doesn't fully set. And so it's providing some continuous daylight even at midnight. Like, as a surreal experience that this is, it can really disrupt your sleep patterns, which is crucial because remember we talked about how exhausting a cruise and land tour can be. It's exciting, it's exhilarating, the adrenaline is pumping for 12 days. You're going to get tired and it's going to catch up with you. So you want to make sure that you don't disrupt your sleep. So consider bringing an eye mask for one, or be sure to maybe grab a woman's hair clip, and you can use this to pinch your curtains closed in your room to make sure that you can rest and recharge during those extended daylight hours. Friends, there you have it. What I wish I knew prior to going into an Alaska land tour. So if you found those helpful, if you enjoyed these tips, be sure to hit subscribe, share this video with a friend who's also interested in an Alaska land tour. I have plenty more travel tips and adventures and exciting content coming your way, so don't miss out on those future videos. You can check out what's next in this playlist right here. As always, if you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments down below. And thanks for watching. Until next time, ciao for now.